Cole Mercer stepped through the front door at 7:23 p.m., his paramedic uniform still smelling of antiseptic and other people's emergencies. The house felt cold despite the October heat that clung to Springfield like a wet blanket. "Lena," he called out, setting his keys on the wooden table by the door. The same table where she used to leave him notes, little drawings of hearts or funny messages about dinner. Now it collected dust and unpaid bills. Silence answered him back. He found Finn in the living room, sprawled on the carpet with his coloring books. The 6-year-old looked up with bright eyes that mirrored Cole's own. "Dad, look what I made." Finn held up a drawing of 3 stick figures standing in front of a house. One big figure, one medium, one small. A family. Cole knelt down and ruffled his son's hair. "That's real good, buddy. Where's Mom?" "She's on the phone again." Finn went back to coloring, pressing his crayon hard against the paper. "She told me to be quiet." Cole's jaw tightened. He could hear Lena's voice drifting from the kitchen, low, secretive. The same tone she'd been using for weeks now. He walked toward the kitchen, his work boots heavy on the hardwood floor. Lena stood with her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, the same hair he used to run his fingers through when they first met 9 years ago. "I know, Tessa," Lena was saying. "I just feel so trapped here, like I'm suffocating." Cole stopped in the doorway. Lena glanced over her shoulder and saw him. Her expression shifted, guilt flickering across her features before hardening into irritation. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "Cole's home." She hung up and turned to face him. At 34, Lena still turned heads wherever she went. But her beauty had taken on a sharp edge lately, like broken glass that caught the light wrong. "Long day?" she asked, but there was no warmth in it. "House fire on Oak Street. Lost a kid about Finn's age." Cole opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. "How was your day?" "Same as every day. Boring. Pointless." Lena crossed her arms. "Did you pick up milk like I asked?" Cole's hand paused on the beer bottle. "You didn't ask me to pick up milk." "I left a note." "Where?" Lena waved her hand dismissively. "I don't remember. Maybe I forgot to write it down. God knows I can't keep track of everything in this house." Cole studied her face. The lie came so easily now, like breathing. "I'll get some tomorrow. Don't bother. I'll handle it myself, like I handle everything else." She moved past him toward the living room, her shoulder bumping his arm harder than necessary. Cole watched her go, noting how she avoided eye contact, how her hands shook slightly. Signs he'd learned to read over the past few months. In the living room, Lena sat on the couch and picked up a magazine. She flipped through pages without really seeing them. "Finn, go wash up for dinner," Cole said. "But I'm not done coloring." "Now, son." Finn scrambled to his feet and headed upstairs. Cole waited until he heard the bathroom door close before sitting down across from Lena. "We need to talk." Lena didn't look up from her magazine. "About what?" "About whatever's eating at you. About why you've been acting like a stranger for the past 3 months." "I don't know what you mean." Cole leaned forward. "Lena, look at me." She raised her eyes reluctantly. They were red-rimmed, tired. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "Please." For a moment, her mask slipped. He saw something raw and desperate underneath. Then she blinked and it was gone. "There's nothing to talk about, Cole. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You haven't been fine since." "Since what?" "Since I realized this is all there is." She gestured around the modest living room with its worn furniture and family photos. "Since I figured out I'm going to spend the rest of my life in this house, in this town, watching my dreams die one grocery store trip at a time." The words hit Cole like a slap. "I thought we built something good here." "You built something. I just got buried under it." Cole felt his chest tighten. "What do you want me to do, Lena? Tell me how to fix this." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can't fix everything, Cole. Some things are just broken." Finn's footsteps echoed on the stairs. Lena immediately changed her expression, forcing a smile as their son bounced back into the room. "All clean, Dad. Good boy. Go set the table." As Finn headed to the kitchen, Cole caught Lena's arm gently. "We could try counseling. Dr. Martinez recommended someone." "I don't need counseling." Lena pulled away. "I need space." The next few weeks passed like a slow-motion car crash. Cole watched his wife withdraw further into herself, becoming a ghost in her own home. She started disappearing for hours without explanation, claiming she needed to run errands or see friends. When she came back, she smelled like cigarettes and other people's perfume. The small cruelties began then. On a Tuesday, Cole got a call from Finn's school. His son had been waiting in the office for 2 hours after dismissal. Mrs. Mercer was supposed to pick him up at 3, the secretary explained. We've been trying to reach her, but her phone goes straight to voicemail. Cole left work early and drove to the school, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. He found Finn sitting alone in the principal's office, looking small and confused. Hey, buddy. Sorry I'm late. Where's Mom? Finn asked as they walked to the car. She got held up. Traffic, probably. But when they got home, Lena's car wasn't in the driveway. She didn't return until almost 9 o'clock, breezing through the door with shopping bags from stores Cole knew she couldn't afford. You forget something today? Cole asked, keeping his voice level. What do you mean? Finn. School pickup. 3 o'clock. Lena's face went blank for a second. Then she shrugged. Oh, right. I lost track of time. Lost track of time. Cole's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. Our son sat in that office for 2 hours thinking something happened to you. Don't be so dramatic. He's fine. That's not the point. What is the point, Cole? That I'm not perfect? That I make mistakes? She dropped her bags on the counter. Join the club. Cole stared at her. The woman he'd married would have been devastated to forget their son. She would have apologized, cried, promised it would never happen again. This stranger wearing Lena's face just shrugged it off like spilled coffee. The weekend brought the annual neighborhood barbecue. Cole had been looking forward to it, a chance to relax, to pretend they were still a normal family. But Lena had other plans. She wore a red dress that hugged her curves and left little to the imagination. Cole noticed the looks from other men as they walked across the Hendersons' backyard. But what bothered him more was how Lena encouraged them. She laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. She touched arms when she talked, leaned in close when she listened. She flirted with married men while their wives watched, her wedding ring catching the light like a taunt. Cole tried to stay close, one hand on Finn's shoulder as his son played with the other kids. But Lena kept drifting away, drawing attention like a magnet. Your wife seems happy, said Tom Henderson, the host. He was trying to sound casual, but Cole caught the way Tom's eyes followed Lena as she chatted with a group of men by the pool. Yeah, happy. Around sunset, Cole found Lena standing with Jake Morrison, a divorce contractor who lived 3 streets over. Jake was leaning against the fence, his face inches from hers. Lena was smiling in a way Cole hadn't seen in months. Ready to head home? Cole interrupted. Lena turned, her smile fading when she saw him. Already? The party just started. Finn's getting tired, so take him home. I can catch a ride later. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Actually, I should probably stay, Lena said, putting her hand on Jake's arm. We were just talking about his renovation projects. I might need some work done around the house. Cole's vision narrowed. What kind of work? I don't know yet. Jake was going to come by this week and take a look. The air between them crackled with tension. Jake mumbled an excuse about needing another beer and disappeared into the crowd. Let's go home, Lena. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not telling you. I'm asking you. Please. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she walked past him toward the car without another word. The drive home was silent, except for Finn's chatter from the back seat about the games he'd played. Cole kept his eyes on the road, but he could feel Lena's anger radiating from the passenger seat like heat from a furnace. That night, after Finn was asleep, Cole tried again. We need to talk about what happened tonight. Lena was brushing her teeth in the bathroom mirror. She spat out toothpaste and rinsed her mouth before answering. What about it? The way you were acting? With Jake? With everyone? I was being friendly. Sorry if that's a crime now. Friendly. Cole stepped into the bathroom doorway. You were flirting with half the neighborhood. So what if I was? At least someone finds me interesting. The words stung more than Cole expected. I find you interesting. No, you don't. You find me useful. There's a difference. Lena pushed past him into the bedroom and started pulling off her jewelry. Her movements were sharp, aggressive. That's not true, isn't it? She turned to face him. When's the last time you looked at me? Really looked at me? Like I was something more than Finn's mother and your housekeeper? Cole opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. When had he stopped seeing her as the free-spirited artist he'd fallen in love with? When had she become just another part of his routine? I look at you every day. You look through me, just like everyone else in this town. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. Do you know what I used to dream about, Cole? Before we got married? Tell me. I wanted to travel. See Paris, Rome, places I'd only read about in books. I wanted to paint in different cities, meet artists, live in tiny apartments with no furniture except an easel and a mattress on the floor. Her voice got softer, more distant. I wanted adventure. We could still travel. Take vacations. When? You work 60 hours a week. We can barely afford to fix the roof, let alone fly to Europe. She shook her head. And even if we could, it wouldn't be the same. I'd be a tourist with a husband and kid, not an artist discovering the world. Cole sat down beside her, careful not to touch. I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't need your pity. It's not pity. I want you to be happy. Lena looked at him then, really looked at him. For a second, he thought she might cry. Instead, she turned away. Some people aren't meant to be happy, Cole. Some people are just meant to want. 2 weeks later, Cole was working a night shift at the hospital when he realized he'd forgotten his phone charger. He drove home during his break, expecting to find the house dark and quiet. Instead, lights spilled from the kitchen windows. Cole parked on the street and walked up the driveway quietly, his keys in his hand. As he approached the kitchen window, he heard Lena's voice. She was on the phone again, but this time she wasn't talking to Tessa. I know it's complicated, she was saying, but I can't keep living like this. It's killing me. Cole pressed himself against the side of the house, staying in the shadows. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Cole sees what he wants to see. Lena laughed, but it sounded forced. Trust me, once I'm out of here, I'm never coming back. Never. Cole's blood turned to ice. He crept closer to the window and peered inside. Lena was pacing the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear. Her face was animated in a way he hadn't seen in months. I just need more time to figure out the logistics. It's not like I can just disappear. She paused, listening. What about Finn? I can't just abandon him. Another pause. Longer this time. I know. You're right. A clean break is better for everyone. Her voice dropped lower. He'll be better off with Cole anyway. I was never cut out to be a mother. Cole felt like he'd been kicked in the chest. He backed away from the window, his hands shaking. His wife was planning to leave him, planning to abandon their son. He got back in his car and drove to work in a daze, Lena's words echoing in his head. Once I'm out of here, I'm never coming back. Never. When his shift ended, Cole sat in his car in the hospital parking lot as the sun came up. He should confront her, demand answers, fight for his marriage, for his family. But deep down, he already knew it was too late. The woman he'd married was gone, replaced by this cold stranger who talked about leaving their son like he was an inconvenience. Cole drove home and found Lena making breakfast, humming to herself. She looked up when he entered, her smile bright and fake. How was work? Fine. Cole poured himself coffee with steady hands. Quiet night. Good. You need more quiet nights. Finn ran into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. Dad, you're home. Cole scooped up his son and held him tight, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. Morning, buddy. Sleep okay? Yep. Mom said we might go to the park today. Cole looked at Lena over Finn's head. She was buttering toast, not meeting his eyes. That sounds fun, Cole said. But even as he said it, he wondered if this was one of the last normal mornings they'd have together. If Lena was already counting down the days until she could walk away from this life she'd built with him. That evening, after Finn was in bed, Cole tried one more time. Lena, we need to talk. She was folding laundry on the couch, her movements mechanical. About what? About us. About our marriage. What about it? Cole sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. I know you're unhappy. I know this isn't the life you planned. But maybe we can work something out. Maybe there's a way to make this better for both of us. Lena's hands stilled on a shirt, one of Finn's. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. And I love our son. And if there's any part of you that still loves us too, then maybe we can find a way through this. For a moment, hope flickered in Cole's chest. Lena's face softened, and he thought he saw the woman he'd married underneath all the anger and resentment. Then her expression hardened again. You think love is enough? You think love pays bills or makes dreams come true? I think love is what we build everything else on. That's naive, Cole. Love fades, dreams die, and then what are you left with? This. She gestured around the room. A house full of furniture you can't afford and a life you never really wanted. I built a life for you, Lena. You just never wanted to live in it. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, but they were true. Every decision he'd made since they got married had been about creating something stable for her and Finn. The house, the job, the careful budgeting that allowed her to pursue her art without worrying about money. Lena stared at him, her face pale. You build a cage. I built a home. Same thing. They looked at each other across the coffee table, years of accumulated hurt and disappointment hanging between them like smoke. Cole realized with a crushing certainty that this was the end. Not a dramatic breakup or a screaming fight, just the quiet recognition that they'd become strangers who happened to share an address. I'm going to bed, Lena said finally. Cole nodded. I'll be up in a while. But he didn't go to bed. He sat on the couch until dawn, listening to the house settle around him and wondering when exactly everything had started falling apart. October turned into November. The tension in the house grew thicker, more suffocating. Lena barely spoke to him anymore except when Finn was around. She'd started staying out later, offering vague explanations about art classes or friend dates that Cole knew were lies. He began working extra shifts, partly because they needed the money and partly because home had become a battlefield where every conversation was an ambush. One evening in late November, Cole came home to find Finn sitting alone at the kitchen table, eating cereal for dinner. Where's Mom? She went out. Said she'd be back later. Cole looked at the clock. 8:30. Finn should have been in bed an hour ago. Did she say where she was going? To see Tessa, I think. She was wearing her fancy dress. Cole's jaw clenched. Lena's fancy dress was the red one from the neighborhood barbecue. Not exactly appropriate attire for a casual visit with a girlfriend. He helped Finn with his bath and bedtime routine, reading him 2 stories instead of 1 to make up for Lena's absence. By the time he tucked his son in, it was nearly 10 o'clock. Dad, Finn's voice was small in the darkness. Yeah, buddy. Is Mom sick? Cole's chest tightened. Why do you ask that? She cries sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, and she's always angry now. Cole sat down on the edge of the bed. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that his mother is falling apart, that she's choosing to leave him? Sometimes adults get sad about things that have nothing to do with you. Cole said carefully. It's not your fault, okay? None of this is your fault. I know, but I wish she'd be happy again. Me too, buddy. Me too. Lena came home at midnight, the smell of cigarettes and alcohol clinging to her clothes. Cole was waiting in the living room, still dressed. Fun night with Tessa? He asked. Lena kicked off her heels and looked at him with glassy eyes. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just asking about your evening. It was fine. She started to walk past him toward the stairs. Lena. She stopped but didn't turn around. This has to stop. What has to stop? This. Whatever game you're playing. The lies, the disappearing, the way you're treating Finn. She whirled around, her face flushed with anger and alcohol. I'm not treating Finn anyway. I'm his mother. Then act like it. The slap came so fast Cole barely saw it coming. His cheek stung, but he didn't flinch. Don't you ever tell me how to be a mother, Lena hissed. You have no idea what I sacrifice every day. What do you sacrifice? Tell me. Myself. The word came out like a scream. I sacrifice myself every single day for this family. And what do I get? Nothing. No appreciation, no recognition, no life of my own. You could have a life of your own. I never stopped you from painting, from having friends. In this town, with these people, this isn't alive, Cole. This is death in slow motion. She turned and ran upstairs, leaving Cole standing alone in the dark living room. A few minutes later, he heard their bedroom door slam. Cole slept on the couch that night, and the next night, and the night after that. December brought an early snow and the pretense of Christmas preparations. Cole put up lights and bought a tree, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for Finn's sake. Lena went through the motions, baking cookies, wrapping presents, but her heart wasn't in it. On Christmas morning, Finn tore through his presents with the enthusiasm that only 6-year-olds could muster. Cole and Lena sat on opposite ends of the couch, watching their son and pretending to be happy. "Look, Mom, Dad got me the action figures I wanted." Lena forced a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." But Cole could see the distance in her eyes, the way she looked at Finn like he was already a memory, like she was practicing for goodbye. January arrived with brutal cold and a finality that settled over the house like ice. Lena had stopped pretending altogether. She spent most days in bed or out of the house entirely. When she was home, she moved through the rooms like a ghost, barely acknowledging Cole or Finn. Cole tried to shield his son from the worst of it, but Finn was starting to ask harder questions. Why doesn't Mom eat dinner with us anymore? Why is she always crying? Why won't she play with me? Cole had no good answers. On a Thursday night in late January, Cole was getting ready for a night shift when he heard Lena on the phone again. This time, she was in their bedroom with the door closed, but her voice carried through the thin walls. "I can't do this much longer," she was saying. "I'm dying here. Every day I stay is another day of my life wasted." Cole pressed his ear to the door. "I know the timing isn't ideal, but when is it ever? I just need to know you're serious about this. About us." A pause. "Yes, I understand what I'd be giving up. But what am I holding on to? A marriage that's been dead for months? A kid who barely knows I exist." The words hit Cole like physical blows. A kid who barely knows I exist. How could she say that about Finn, their son who still asked for her every night at bedtime, who drew pictures of their family and always put her in the center? "I'll figure out the details," Lena continued. "Maybe I can make it look like an accident. If something happened to me, Cole would get life insurance money. He could give Finn a better life than I ever could." Cole's blood turned to ice. Make it look like an accident. What did that mean? No, I don't mean hurt myself. I just mean disappear. Let them think I'm dead so they can move on. Another pause. "You're right. That's too complicated. I'll just leave, write a letter or something." Cole backed away from the door, his hands shaking. His wife wasn't just planning to leave them. She was planning to fake her own death. Or worse. The way she talked about accidents made his skin crawl. He left for work in a daze, Lena's words echoing in his head. All night, he went through the motions of his job while his mind raced. Should he confront her? Call the police? What could he even tell them? That his wife was planning to abandon their family. When his shift ended at dawn, Cole sat in his car and tried to make sense of everything. Maybe he'd misunderstood. Maybe Lena was just venting, saying things she didn't mean. But deep down, he knew better. The woman he'd married was capable of many things, but this level of coldness was new. This willingness to destroy everything they'd built, including their son's sense of security, was something else entirely. Cole drove home through the empty streets, the winter sun casting everything in harsh, unforgiving light. He found Lena in the kitchen, making coffee as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't spent the night planning their destruction. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Morning. Finn's still asleep. I thought I'd let him sleep in since it's Saturday." "Good idea." They stood in awkward silence, the weight of unspoken truths heavy between them. Cole studied his wife's face, looking for some sign of the woman he'd fallen in love with. But all he saw was a stranger wearing Lena's features. "I need to run some errands today," Lena said, still not meeting his eyes. "What kind of errands?" "Just things. Grocery store, post office. Nothing important." Another lie. Cole nodded anyway. "I'll stay home with Finn." "Thanks." She finished her coffee and headed upstairs. A few minutes later, Cole heard the shower running. He walked to the kitchen window and looked out at their backyard, where Finn's swing set sat empty under a layer of snow. How had it come to this? When had love turned to indifference, and indifference to something that felt dangerously close to hatred? February passed in a blur of quiet desperation. Cole tried to document Lena's behavior. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way she looked at Finn like he was already gone. But what was he documenting for? What was he trying to prove? That his wife didn't love him anymore? He already knew that. That she was planning to leave? The evidence was overwhelming. That she might be capable of something worse than abandonment? That was the thought that kept Cole awake at night. The way Lena had talked about accidents, about making things look like something they weren't, combined with her growing desperation and the mysterious man on the other end of those phone calls, it painted a picture that terrified him. But what could he do? Call the police and tell them his wife was acting strange? They'd laugh him out of the station. File for divorce? With what money? And based on what evidence? Lena was careful, manipulative. She'd find a way to make him look like the unstable one. So Cole waited and watched, and tried to protect his son from the storm he could feel building around them. The storm finally broke on a cold night in early March. Cole was working a night shift when his phone rang at 3:17 a.m. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Cole Mercer, speaking. This is Captain Reynolds with the Springfield Fire Department. I'm sorry to tell you this, sir, but there's been a fire at your residence. The words didn't make sense at first. Cole stared at the wall of the ambulance bay, his brain refusing to process the information. A fire? Yes, sir. We responded to a call about 30 minutes ago. The house there was significant damage. My family. Are they? The pause lasted forever. Sir, I think you need to get down here. Can someone drive you? Cole's legs gave out. He slumped against the ambulance, the phone slipping from his numb fingers. His partner, Rick, caught him before he fell. What is it? What's wrong? Cole couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rick picked up the phone and talked to the captain while Cole stared at nothing, his world collapsing around him like a house of cards. The drive to his neighborhood took place in a dreamlike haze. Cole sat in the passenger seat of Rick's truck, watching the familiar streets flash by. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But when they turned onto his street, the reality hit him like a physical blow. Fire trucks lined the road, their red and blue lights painting the darkness in violent colors. Neighbors stood in clusters on the sidewalk, watching the scene with morbid fascination. And where his house had stood, where his family had been sleeping just hours ago, there was nothing but smoldering ruins and the acrid smell of destruction. Cole stumbled out of the truck and ran toward the wreckage, but strong hands caught him, held him back. Sir, you can't go in there. It's not safe. My family. Where's my family? Captain Reynolds appeared beside him, his face grim. Mr. Mercer, I'm sorry. We found 2 victims in the master bedroom, a woman and a child. The words hit Cole like bullets. 2 victims, a woman and a child. Lena and Finn. Are they? I'm sorry, sir. They didn't make it out. Cole's legs buckled. He felt his knees on the wet pavement, the cold seeping through his pants. Around him, the world continued. Firefighters rolled up hoses. Neighbors whispered among themselves. Investigators took photos. But for Cole, everything had stopped. His wife was dead. His son was dead. His entire life had gone up in smoke while he was at work, saving other people's emergencies. What happened? He managed to ask. Captain Reynolds crouched down beside him. Preliminary investigation suggests faulty wiring in the master bedroom wall. Old house, old electrical system. It happens more than you'd think. Faulty wiring. An accident. No one's fault, just bad luck and worse timing. But as Cole knelt there in the ashes of his life, Lena's words echoed in his memory. Maybe I can make it look like an accident. If something happened to me, Cole would get life insurance money. The investigators ruled it an electrical fire caused by faulty wiring behind the master bedroom wall. There was no evidence of foul play, no signs of accelerants or tampering. Just a tragic accident that took 2 innocent lives. The funerals were a blur of casseroles and condolences. Cole went through the motions like a robot, picking out flowers, choosing readings, accepting embraces from people who meant well but couldn't possibly understand. Finn's funeral was the worst. The tiny casket, the teddy bears and toy cars left by classmates. The way everyone kept saying he was in a better place, as if any place could be better than the living room where he'd colored pictures and built blanket forts. Lena's service was larger, more complicated. Her family came from out of state, people who'd never approved of Cole and made their feelings clear even in grief. Her mother cornered him at the reception. She was never happy here, the older woman said, her voice sharp with accusation. She called me a few weeks ago, crying. Said she felt trapped. Cole nodded numbly. I know. You should have done more. Should have seen the signs. The signs. If only she knew how many signs Cole had seen, how many clues he'd ignored or explained away. But what good would it do to tell her about Lena's plans to leave, about the mysterious phone calls and the talk of accidents? His wife and son were dead. Nothing else mattered now. After the funerals, Cole tried to go back to work. But every emergency call reminded him of that night, of racing through the dark toward a disaster he couldn't fix. His hands shook when he worked, his focus scattered. After 2 weeks, his supervisor put him on administrative leave. "Take some time," Chief Morrison said. "Get your head straight. The job will be here when you're ready." But Cole wasn't sure he'd ever be ready for anything again. He spent his days in the house where it happened, surrounded by the charity donations and insurance adjusters. The master bedroom was gutted, the walls blackened with soot and water damage. The rest of the house smelled like smoke and loss. Cole found himself standing in Finn's room most days, looking at the toys and books that would never be used again. The stick figure drawing of their family still hung on the refrigerator, the paper yellowed from the heat, but somehow untouched by the flames. 3 months after the fire, Cole made a decision. He couldn't stay in Springfield anymore. Couldn't drive past the school where Finn should have been learning to read. Couldn't shop at the grocery store where Lena used to complain about the prices. He sold the property to a developer who planned to tear down what remained and build something new. The insurance money from Lena's death benefit went into an account he never touched. Blood money, he thought. The price of a life he'd failed to save. Cole packed his truck with a few belongings that mattered, photos, some of Finn's favorite books, Lena's art supplies that somehow survived the fire. Then he drove out of Springfield without looking back, leaving behind everything he'd built and everyone he'd known. For the next 7 years, he drifted. Different cities, different jobs, different versions of himself. He worked construction in Denver, drove trucks through the Midwest, picked up shifts at rural hospitals when his medical training was needed. He never stayed anywhere long enough to form attachments. Never let anyone get close enough to hurt him again. He lived like a ghost, moving through the world without really inhabiting it. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he'd think about that night. About Lena's phone calls and her talk of accidents. About the perfect timing of an electrical fire that killed exactly the 2 people standing between her and the freedom she'd craved. But those thoughts led nowhere good. The fire had been investigated, the case closed. Whatever plans Lena might have had died with her in that master bedroom, along with their innocent son who'd never done anything worse than forget to put away his toys. Cole learned to live with the not knowing, the way he'd learned to live with everything else. Day by day, mile by mile, 1 foot in front of the other until the pain became background noise and survival became habit. 7 years passed like a hell breath. And then one day, the phone rang. Riley Vaughn sounded nervous on the phone, her voice young and uncertain. Cole had been working a demolition job in Phoenix when she called, and at first he almost didn't answer. The Springfield area code made his chest tighten. "Mr. Mercer? I'm really sorry to bother you. I got your number from the property records. I'm Riley Vaughn, and I bought your old house on Maple Street." Cole set down his hard hat and walked away from the noise of the construction site. "The house burned down. I know. I bought the lot. Had a new house built there 2 years ago." She paused. "I probably shouldn't have called, but I found something, and I thought you should know about it." "What kind of something?" "A camera, hidden in the living room wall. The contractors found it when they were running new electrical. It looks like it was installed before the fire." Cole's blood went cold. "A camera?" "Yeah, small one, wireless. The memory card was damaged from a heat, but I know a guy who works in data recovery. He was able to salvage some footage." Riley's voice got smaller. "I'll watch a little bit of it. I think it might be from the night of the fire." The construction site faded around Cole. 7 years collapsed into nothing, and suddenly he was back on that cold March night, watching his life burn down from across the street. "Can you send it to me?" "Of course. I have your email from the property transfer." "Mr. Mercer, I'm really sorry for your loss. I can't imagine what you went through." Cole thanked her and hung up, then sat in his truck for 20 minutes staring at his phone. A hidden camera, footage from the night of the fire. After all these years of wondering, of trying to forget, the answers might finally be within reach. His phone chimed with an email notification. Riley had sent a single video file with a brief message. Let me know if you need anything else. Cole drove to a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and downloaded the file to his laptop. His hand shook as he opened it. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. on March 15th, less than 4 hours before the fire started. The image was grainy, shot from a hidden camera mounted high on the living room wall. Cole recognized the furniture, the family photos on the mantelpiece, the couch where he'd spent his last night sleeping separately from Lena. For a moment, the room was empty. Then Lena walked into frame. Cole's breath caught. He hadn't seen her face in 7 years except in dreams and nightmares. She looked thin, agitated, wearing the blue nightgown he'd bought her for Christmas. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes were red from crying. She paced the living room like a caged animal, muttering to herself. Cole turned up the volume, straining to hear her words. I can't do this anymore, she was saying. I won't live like this. I won't. She stopped pacing and stood in the center of the room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. For the last time. Trapped, she whispered. So fucking trapped. Lena walked to the kitchen and returned with something in her hand. A box of matches. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. On the screen, his dead wife opened the matchbox with shaking fingers. She pulled out a single match and held it up to the light. Freedom, she said softly. Finally, freedom. She struck the match. The small flame flickered in the darkness, casting dancing shadows on her face. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the fire in her hand. Then she blew it out. She struck another match, and another. Each time, she would light it, stare at the flame, then extinguish it before it could burn down to her fingers. Do it, she whispered to herself. Just do it. The fourth match burned longer. Lena held it closer to her face, the light making her eyes look hollow and desperate. For you, she said to the empty room. For both of us. It's better this way. She dropped the match. The image went to static. Cole stared at the blank screen, his mind reeling. Lena had started the fire. She had murdered their son and killed herself in the process. The faulty wiring story was a lie, or a cover-up, or a coincidence that hid the real truth. His wife had been a killer. He played the footage again, studying every detail. Lena's face when she struck the matches. The way she talked to the empty room like someone was there with her. The careful deliberation in her movements. This wasn't a moment of madness or despair. This was planned, calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing. Cole saved the file to his hard drive and copied it to a thumb drive. Then he sat in the coffee shop for 3 hours, watching the footage over and over until he could recite Lena's words from memory. That night, lying in his motel room, Cole tried to make sense of what he'd seen. Lena had always been manipulative, but this level of calculation was beyond anything he'd imagined. To murder their child, their innocent 6-year-old son, for what? Her freedom? Her chance to start over? But something about the footage bothered him. The way Lena had talked to the empty room, as if she wasn't alone. The hesitation before she dropped the match, like she was waiting for permission or encouragement. Cole called Riley the next morning. Did you find anything else? Any other cameras or equipment? Not yet, but I'm still renovating. Why? I'm going to drive up there. Take a look around myself, if that's okay with you. Riley's voice brightened. Of course. I'd love to meet you. I have so many questions about the neighborhood, about what it was like before. Cole winced. She sounded young, enthusiastic. Probably thought of the fire as just another piece of local history instead of the end of everything that mattered to him. I'll be there tomorrow. The drive from Phoenix to Springfield took 16 hours. Cole drove straight through, stopping only for gas and coffee. The landscape changed from desert to plains to the rolling hills of Missouri, but Cole barely noticed. His mind was stuck on that grainy footage, on Lena's face in the matchlight. Springfield looked smaller than he remembered. The downtown had been revitalized with trendy restaurants and boutique shops, but the neighborhoods were the same. Cole drove past his old ambulance station, past Finn's elementary school, past the park where they used to feed ducks on Sunday afternoons. Maple Street looked different. New houses mixed with old ones, young families moving into a neighborhood that had once been full of retirees and empty nesters. Cole parked in front of the address that used to be his home. The new house was nice. A craftsman-style bungalow with a wide front porch and professionally landscaped yard. Nothing like the modest ranch house where he'd built his life and lost everything. Riley Vaughn answered the door before he could knock. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe late 20s, with short blonde hair and paint under her fingernails. "Mr. Mercer, thank you so much for coming. Please come in." The interior was bright and modern, all open floor plans and exposed beams. Cole tried to orient himself to figure out where the old rooms would have been, but the layout was completely different. "I know it's not what you remember," Riley said, watching his face. "But I try to honor the history of the property. There's a small memorial garden in the backyard, with a plaque for your family." Cole's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. This is my first house, and I believe in respecting the people who came before." Riley led him into what would have been the living room. The camera was found right about here, behind where the old wall used to be. Cole looked up at the ceiling, trying to visualize the hidden camera's angle. Who installed it? No idea. The property records don't show any security system, and it wasn't connected to the house's electrical. It was battery-powered, wireless. Someone put it there secretly. When? Hard to say. The model was about 8 years old when we found it, so it could have been installed anywhere from a few months to a few years before the fire. Cole walked around the room, his mind racing. Someone had been watching his family, recording them. But who? And why? "Have you found anything else unusual during the renovation?" Riley hesitated. "Actually, yes. Come look at this." She led him to what would have been the master bedroom. The room was now a home office, but Riley pointed to a section of the far wall. "When we were installing built-in shelves, we found another hiding spot. Not a camera this time, but this." She opened a small safe and pulled out a plastic bag containing what looked like a memory card. "Another camera? Maybe. Or possibly an external storage device for the first one. I haven't had it analyzed yet. I wanted to ask you first." Cole stared at the memory card. More footage. More secrets from that night. "Can we look at it now?" Riley nodded and led him to her computer. She inserted the memory card into an adapter and waited for it to load. After a few minutes, a video file appeared. This footage was different. Higher quality, better angle. It showed the same living room from a different perspective, one that included the doorway to the kitchen and part of the stairs. The timestamp was earlier, 11:23 p.m. Lena entered the frame, but she wasn't alone. A man followed her into the living room, staying in the shadows near the kitchen doorway. Cole's pulse quickened. "Can you enhance the image? Get a better look at him?" Riley adjusted the contrast and brightness. The man remained largely obscured, but Cole could make out his general build: tall, thin, probably in his 30s or 40s. On screen, Lena was talking to the man in urgent, hushed tones. Cole couldn't make out the words, but her body language screamed desperation and fear. The man moved closer, stepping partially into the light. Cole caught a glimpse of his profile, angular features, dark hair, a face that seemed vaguely familiar. Then the man spoke, his voice just loud enough for the camera to pick up. "Do it. You said you would." Cole's blood turned to ice. The voice from Lena's phone calls. The mysterious man she'd been planning with. On screen, the man reached into the frame and handed Lena something. "The matchbox. For both of us," he said. "You know it's the only way." Lena took the matches with shaking hands. "What about Finn? He'll be asleep. It'll be quick. I can't. He's my son. He's keeping you here. Keeping us apart." The man's voice turned sharp. "Do you want to be free or not?" Lena looked toward the stairs, toward where their son was sleeping. Cole could see the war playing out on her face, maternal instinct battling desperate desire for escape. "I love him," she whispered. "You love me more. You said so yourself." Lena closed her eyes. When she opened them, something fundamental had changed. The warmth, the hesitation, the last traces of the mother Cole had known, all of it was gone. "Okay," she said. "Okay." The man stepped back into the shadows. "I'll wait outside. Make it look like an accident." The wiring in the bedroom wall. Old house, old electrical. "Perfect. Call me when it's done." The man left through what must have been the back door. Lena stood alone in the living room, holding the matches. A few minutes later, she began pacing and muttering. The scene Cole had already witnessed from the other camera. But now he knew the truth. Lena hadn't acted alone. Someone had pushed her, encouraged her, given her the tools and the excuse to murder their child. Jesus, Riley whispered beside him. This is evidence of murder. Cole's hands clenched into fists. Can you copy this file for me? Of course. Are you going to take it to the police? Cole stared at the frozen image on the screen, his wife holding the murder weapon while her accomplice waited outside. 7 years. 7 years he grieved for a woman who'd kill their son. 7 years he'd blamed himself for not seeing the signs, not stopping the tragedy. Now he knew better. Lena hadn't been a victim of her own despair. She'd been a willing participant in a cold-blooded plan to commit murder and fraud. I need to know who he is first, Cole said. The man in the video. Riley nodded and burned the file to a disk. As she worked, Cole studied the enhanced image of the accomplice. There was something familiar about the man's profile, something that nagged at the edges of Cole's memory. Thank you, he said when she handed him a disk. You've given me answers I've been looking for since the night it happened. What will you do now? Cole looked around the room that had once been his and Lena's bedroom. The place where they'd loved each other, fought with each other, and ultimately destroyed each other. I'm going to find him. That night, Cole checked into a motel on the outskirts of town and began making calls. His first stop was Tessa Rollins, Lena's best friend. According to social media, she was still in Springfield, married with 2 kids, and working as a school counselor. Tessa agreed to meet him for coffee, though she sounded nervous on the phone. When Cole walked into the Starbucks downtown, he almost didn't recognize her. The carefree woman who used to attend neighborhood barbecues had been replaced by someone who looked older, more serious, weighed down by responsibilities and secrets. Cole. She stood and hugged him awkwardly. I wasn't sure you'd ever come back to Springfield. I wasn't sure either. They sat at a corner table, away from the other customers. Tessa fidgeted with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. I heard you've been traveling, working different places. Something like that. Cole studied her face. Tessa, I need to ask you about Lena. About the months before she died. Tessa's shoulders tensed. What about them? Was she seeing someone? Having an affair? The question hung in the air like smoke. Tessa's face went pale, and Cole knew he'd hit the mark. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I found video footage from that night. Lena wasn't alone when she started the fire. Tessa's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. Video footage? Hidden cameras. Someone was recording everything. Cole leaned forward. Who was she seeing, Tessa? I can't. I promised her. Promised a dead woman? A woman who murdered my son. The words came out harsher than Cole intended, but they had the desired effect. Tessa flinched and looked around to make sure no one was listening. She said you'd never understand. That you were too conventional. Understand what? She felt trapped, Cole, like she was suffocating. She talked about leaving all the time, but she was scared of what people would think. Scared of losing Finn in a custody battle. So she killed him instead. Tessa shook her head frantically. No, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. She was just going to leave. Disappear. The fire was supposed to destroy evidence that she'd been planning it. Cole's vision narrowed. Evidence of what? Bank accounts. Money she'd been skimming from your joint account. Love letters. Photos. Tessa's voice dropped to a whisper. She was going to fake her death, collect the life insurance, and start over somewhere else. With who? I can't tell you that. You can and you will. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. Because if you don't, I'll go to the police with what I have. And when they investigate, they'll find out you were an accessory to murder. Tessa's face crumpled. I didn't know she was going to hurt Finn. I swear, Cole. She said he'd be safe. She said she'd make sure he got out. But he didn't get out. He died in that fire, terrified and alone. My 6-year-old son burned to death because your best friend chose her own selfish desires over his life. Tears streamed down Tessa's cheeks. Noah Trent. She was seeing Noah Trent from the art center. Cole knew the name. Noah had worked with Lena at the community arts program, teaching pottery and sculpture to local kids. He was divorced, childless, the kind of man who made women feel understood and special. How long? 6 months, maybe longer. It started as just friendship, someone to talk to about art and dreams and all the things she felt like she couldn't discuss with you. But it turned into more. And the plan? Noah said he knew people who could help her disappear. New identity, clean start. But she was scared about the money situation, about how to support herself without job experience or references. Tessa wiped her eyes. The life insurance was Noah's idea. He said if something happened to her, you'd be financially secure and Finn would have a trust fund for college. Cole's hands clenched on the table. Something happening to her. Like a house fire. She said it was supposed to look like an accident. Old wiring, electrical problems. Noah had researched it. Found cases where insurance paid out without too many questions. And Finn, she said she'd wake him up first. Get him out safely before starting the fire. Make it look like she died trying to save him. Tessa's voice broke. I don't know what went wrong. Maybe the fire spread too fast. Maybe she couldn't get to him in time. But she never meant for him to die. Cole stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Other customers looked over, alarmed by the noise. Where's Noah now? I don't know. He left town right after the fire. People said he was too broken up about Lena's death to stay. Broken up, Cole repeated flatly. Right. He left Tessa, crying in her coffee, and walked out into the Missouri sunshine. The world looked different now. Sharper, more dangerous. For 7 years, he'd carried guilt about not saving his family. Now he knew the truth. He'd been betrayed by people he trusted, and his son had died because of it. Cole drove to the community art center where Lena and Noah had worked together. The building was old, converted from a warehouse, with large windows and exposed brick walls. Inside, the smell of clay and paint brought back memories of visiting Lena during her volunteer hours. The director was a woman named Margaret Steele, probably in her 50s, with gray hair and paint-stained clothes. She remembered Cole from memorial service. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said when he introduced himself. Lena was such a talented artist. We still have some of her work displayed in the main gallery. I'm actually here about Noah Trent. He worked here with Lena. Margaret's expression shifted, became more guarded. Yes, Noah was our sculpture instructor. Lovely man, very dedicated to the program. When did he leave? Right after the fire. Understandable, really. He and Lena were close friends. I think her death hit him quite hard. Cole nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Do you have contact information for him? I'd like to reach out, maybe share some memories of Lena. I'm sorry, but I can't give out personal information about former employees. Privacy policies, you understand. Of course. Maybe you could tell me what kind of work he did here? His background. Margaret relaxed slightly. Noah was wonderful with the children's programs. He had such patience, such a gift for helping young people express themselves through art. Before he came here, he worked at various studios around the region. Very talented sculptor in his own right. Did he ever mention plans to relocate? Maybe to another state? Not that I recall. His departure was quite sudden, actually. He called in one day and said he was leaving town immediately. Personal emergency, he said. We never heard from him again. Cole thanked Margaret and left, but not before taking a few photos of Noah's artwork that still hung in the gallery. The sculptures were abstract, angular pieces that suggested movement and emotion. One in particular caught Cole's attention, a piece titled Freedom that showed a figure breaking free from chains. Outside, Cole called Riley Vaughn. I need to ask you something. Have you had any unusual experiences in the house? Strange noises, anything like that? Riley's voice got quiet. Actually, yes. Why do you ask? What kind of noises? Footsteps upstairs, mostly at night. And sometimes I hear voices, like people talking in the living room when no one's there. I thought maybe it was just old house settling, or maybe I was imagining things because I knew what had happened there. Cole's skin prickled. When did this start? About a month ago, right after I found the cameras. Actually, it's gotten worse recently. Last night, I could have sworn I heard someone crying. Riley, I want you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a few days. What? Why? I think someone might be watching the house. Maybe the same person who installed those cameras. Are you serious? Dead serious. Find a hotel or stay with friends. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't go back to the house alone. Riley's voice went shaky. You're scaring me. Good. Fear will keep you safe. After hanging up, Cole drove through Springfield's older neighborhoods. looking for any sign of Noah Trent. The man had left town immediately after the fire, but maybe he'd kept ties to the area. Maybe he'd been watching, waiting to see if his secret would ever come to light. Cole's search led him to Lena's old art studio, a small space she'd rented downtown for her personal projects. The building was mostly empty now, half the storefronts vacant. But the landlord still had an office on the first floor. Joe Martinez was in his 70s, a thick-set man with kind eyes who remembered Lena fondly. Such a tragedy, he said when Cole explained who he was. She was behind on rent those last few months, but I didn't have the heart to evict her. She seemed so troubled, like she was fighting some kind of internal battle. Do you still have her belongings from the studio? Most of it was cleared out by her family after the funeral, but there might be some things in storage. Insurance paperwork, lease documents, that sort of thing. What? I'm trying to tie up some loose ends. Financial stuff. Joe led Cole down to the basement storage area and pulled out a box labeled Mercer L. Inside were rent receipts, utility bills, and bank statements that painted a disturbing picture. Lena had been transferring money from their joint account to a separate account for months, small amounts at first, then larger sums as the fire date approached. The bank statements showed deposits that didn't match her part-time income from the art center. But it was the credit card statements that made Cole's hands shake. Charges for hotel rooms in Kansas City. Expensive dinners at restaurants Cole had never heard of. Jewelry purchases that Lena had never brought home. She'd been living a double life, funded by money stolen from their family savings. Mr. Martinez, do you remember if Lena had any visitors at the studio? Anyone who came by regularly? Oh yes, that fellow from the art center. Noah something. He helped her move equipment sometimes, carry the heavy stuff. Seemed like a nice young man. Did you ever see them together outside of work? Like they were close. Joe's expression grew uncomfortable. I try not to judge, you understand. People's personal lives are their own business. But yes, I got the impression they were more than just colleagues. Cole thanked Joe and took the box of papers with him. In his motel room that night, he spread everything out on the bed and tried to piece together the timeline of Lena and Noah's relationship. The affair had started 8 months before the fire, based on the hotel charges. The money transfers began around the same time. By the final month, Lena was taking substantial amounts, enough to suggest she was planning to leave permanently. But the insurance angle bothered Cole. Lena's life insurance policy was only for $150,000, hardly enough to fund a new life for 2 people. Unless Noah had convinced her that he had his own resources, or that they could access the money from Cole's policy as well if something happened to both parents. The thought made Cole sick. Had they planned to kill him too? Make it look like the whole family died in the fire? Cole's phone buzzed with a text from Riley, staying at my sister's house. But something weird. There's a car parked across from your old house. Been there all day. Silver sedan, can't see the driver. Cole grabbed his keys and drove to Maple Street. Sure enough, a silver sedan sat at the curb 3 houses down from Riley's place. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside, but the engine was running. Cole parked behind the sedan and got out of his truck. The other car immediately started moving, pulling away from the curb and speeding down the street. Cole tried to follow, but the sedan turned several corners and disappeared into traffic. But not before Cole caught a partial license plate. Ohio tags, starting with the letters in T. Noah Trent. Cole called the motel and extended his stay indefinitely. Then he called in a favor from Rick, his old paramedic partner, who now worked in the police department. I need you to run a plate for me. Ohio registration. Starts with an T, probably a silver sedan. Cole, what are you mixed up in? Justice. Long overdue justice. Rick called back an hour later. Noah Michael Trent, 4847 Riverside Drive, Columbus, Ohio. But Cole, the car was reported stolen 3 days ago. Stolen? Yeah, and there's more. Guy's been arrested twice in the past 5 years. Once for insurance fraud, once for arson. Both charges were dropped on technicalities, but the pattern's there. Cole felt pieces clicking into place. Noah wasn't just an adulterer who manipulated a desperate woman. He was a professional criminal who specialized in exactly the kind of scheme that had killed Finn. Rick, I need another favor. Can you check if there have been any other house fires in the Columbus area? Suspicious circumstances, insurance payouts, anything that might fit the pattern. This is getting heavy, man. Maybe you should let the professionals handle it. The professionals ruled it an accident 7 years ago. I'm handling it myself. Rick sighed. Give me a day or two. And Cole, be careful. If this guy is what you think he is, he's dangerous. That night, Cole lay awake in his motel room and thought about Finn. His son had died, believing his mother was coming to save him. Instead, she'd chosen a stranger over her own child's life. The grief Cole had carried for 7 years was transforming into something else. Something colder and more focused. He'd spent 7 years running from the pain, trying to forget. Now he had a purpose again. Noah Trent had murdered his son, and Cole was going to make sure he paid for it. 2 days later, Rick called with disturbing news. Found 3 house fires in the Columbus area over the past 6 years. All ruled accidental, all involving electrical problems. And Cole? 2 of them killed children. Cole's vision went red. Send me the addresses. I'm not sending you anything. You need to take this to the FBI. This is serial killer territory. The FBI will take months to build a case. How many more kids will die while they're pushing paperwork? Cole, listen to yourself. You're talking about vigilante justice. I'm talking about stopping a child killer. Cole hung up and booked a flight to Columbus. As his plane lifted off from Springfield, he looked down at the city where he'd lost everything. When he came back, if he came back, it would be with answers. And Noah Trent would finally face the consequences of what he'd done. Columbus, Ohio felt like a city holding its breath. Cole rented a car at the airport and drove through neighborhoods that could have been Springfield middle-class homes with young families and aging retirees, the kind of places where people trusted their neighbors and never expected evil to wear a familiar face. The address Rick had given him led to a modest apartment complex near the university. Noah Trent's apartment was on the 2nd floor, corner unit with a view of the parking lot. Cole sat in his rental car for 3 hours, watching for any sign of movement. At 4:30 p.m., a silver sedan pulled into the lot. Cole recognized the partial plate. This was the car that had been watching Riley's house. The man who got out was tall and thin, just like the figure in the hidden camera footage. When he turned toward the stairs, Cole finally saw his face clearly. Noah Trent looked older than his 37 years. His dark hair was thinning, his face lined with premature wrinkles. He moved with the nervous energy of someone who was always looking over his shoulder. Cole waited until Noah disappeared into his apartment, then approached the building. The front door required a key card, but Cole had learned a few tricks during his years of drifting through different cities. A credit card and some patience got him inside. Noah's door was standard apartment-grade security, flimsy and designed more for privacy than protection. Cole knocked and waited. Yeah. Noah Trent. Who's asking? My name is Cole Mercer. I think we need to talk. The silence stretched long enough that Cole wondered if Noah had recognized the name. Then locks clicked and the door opened a few inches, held by a security chain. Noah's face appeared in the gap. Up close, Cole could see the fear in his eyes. I don't know any Cole Mercer. Yes, you do. You knew my wife, Lena. You knew my son, Finn. You killed them both. The door slammed shut. Cole heard scrambling inside, the sound of someone moving furniture or trying to escape through a back window. Cole kicked the door. The frame splintered and the security chain snapped. He found Noah in the living room, frantically stuffing papers into a backpack. Going somewhere, Noah spun around, his face pale and sweaty. You can't be here. This is breaking and entering. You murdered my family. That was an accident. A tragic accident. Cole stepped closer, and Noah backed against the wall. I have video footage that says otherwise. 2 cameras, actually. Amazing what people record these days. The backpack slipped from Noah's hands, spilling papers across the floor. Cole glanced down and saw insurance documents, bank account numbers, and what looked like fake identification cards. Planning another disappearing act? You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. Noah's eyes darted toward the door, calculating escape routes. Lena was unhappy. She wanted out of her marriage, but she was scared of losing custody of her kid. I helped her see that there were other options. Other options like burning down my house with my son inside? That wasn't supposed to happen. The words exploded out of Noah like a confession he'd been holding back for years. Finn was supposed to get out. Lena promised me she'd wake him up first, get him to safety. The fire was only supposed to destroy evidence of her plans to leave. Cole's hands clenched into fists. But you gave her the matches. You told her to do it. I gave her support. She was suicidal, talking about killing herself anyway. At least this way, you get insurance money to help rebuild your life. And what did you get out of it? Noah's jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging. She was going to leave with me, start over somewhere new. We had it all planned. New identities, a place in Mexico where we could live cheaply while she worked on her art. Funded by my wife's life insurance. She deserved better than that life you gave her. She was an artist, not some suburban housewife. The casual dismissal of Lena's role as a mother hit Cole like a physical blow. She was Finn's mother. She never wanted to be a mother. She told me that herself. She said having a kid ruined her life, trapped her in a role she wasn't meant for. Cole's vision went red. So you convinced her to murder him. I convinced her to choose herself for once instead of living for other people. The admission hung in the air between them. Noah seemed to realize what he'd said, his face going even paler. That's not. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Cole's voice was deadly calm. You manipulated a troubled woman into committing murder. And when the fire spread faster than you expected, you let her die too rather than risk exposure. It wasn't like that. Then tell me how it was. Noah slumped into a chair, his hands shaking. For a moment, he looked almost relieved to finally be talking about it. Lena called me that night, panicking. Said the fire was spreading too fast, that she couldn't get to Finn's room. She was trapped in the master bedroom. I could hear her coughing, choking on the smoke. And you left her there. What was I supposed to do? Call the fire department and admit I was involved? I had my own future to think about. Cole stared at this man who had orchestrated his family's destruction with such casual selfishness. How many others, Noah? What? How many other families have you destroyed? I know about the fires in Columbus. The electrical problems that killed children. Noah's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Cole picked up one of the papers that had spilled from the backpack. It was a detailed floor plan of a house, with electrical systems marked in red ink. Whose house is this? Nobody's. It's just research. Research for what? Noah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Cole grabbed him by the shirt and hauled him to his feet. How many kids, Noah? How many families? It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. The fight went out of Noah all at once. He sagged in Cole's grip, his voice barely above a whisper. Three families since Lena. Cole's hands tightened on Noah's shirt. Children. 2 kids died. The other family, the father got out with his daughter. But the mother didn't make it. What? Money. Insurance payouts split with the surviving spouses. They all wanted out of their marriages, wanted to start over, but they were afraid of custody battles or financial ruin. So you offer them a solution. I offer them freedom. Cole shoved Noah backward. The man stumbled and fell, hitting his head on the corner of a coffee table. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. Freedom, Cole repeated, by murdering children. They weren't supposed to die, Noah said from the floor. None of them were. It was just supposed to be the spouses, making it look accidental so the insurance would pay out clean. But kids keep dying anyway. Accidents happen. Fires spread faster than expected. Sometimes people panic and can't think clearly. Cole looked down at this pathetic man who had built a career on exploiting desperate people and murdering innocents. The rage he'd carried for 7 years crystallized into something pure and focused. What's your real name? What? Noah Trent isn't your real name. I checked. The social security number doesn't match the age, and there's no birth certificate on file. Noah wiped blood from his forehead. Michael Nash. I changed it after the first fire. Too many questions. How long have you been doing this? 15 years. Maybe 20. I lose track. Cole's mind reeled. 20 years of murdered families. Dozens of dead children. All because this psychopath had found a way to monetize desperation and disguise it as mercy. I'm going to destroy you, Cole said quietly. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine, and you just broke into my apartment and assaulted me. Cole smiled for the first time in months. I don't need to prove anything in court. Noah's eyes widened as he understood the implication. You can't. You're not a killer. Neither were the people you manipulated. But look how that turned out. Cole gathered up the papers Noah had been trying to destroy: insurance documents, fake IDs, detailed plans for future fires. Among them, he found a list of names and addresses. Potential targets, all single parents or unhappy spouses with substantial life insurance policies. Planning ahead? Those are just possibilities. People who might need help someday. Help dying, you mean? Cole photographed everything with his phone, building a complete record of Noah's operation. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He called the police. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report a serial killer. 4847 Riverside Drive, Apartment 2B, Columbus, Ohio. Noah scrambled to his feet. What are you doing? The right thing. Finally, Cole gave the dispatcher a brief summary, enough to get them to send units immediately. Then he hung up and looked at Noah. You're going to confess. Everything. Every fire, every family, every child you killed. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to release all the evidence to the media. Photos, videos, documents, your real name, and criminal history. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the most hated man in America. That's not legal. Neither is murdering children. But at least my way, other kids might be saved. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Noah looked toward the window with desperate eyes. There's nowhere to run, Cole said. And even if there was, I'd find you. I've got nothing else to do with my life except make sure you pay for what you took from me. The siren stopped outside the building. Heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Last chance, Cole said. Confess, and maybe you'll get life in prison instead of lethal injection. Noah stared at him for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged in defeat. She really loved me, you know. Lena, she said I was the only person who understood her dreams. She loved the lie you sold her. The fantasy of escape. Maybe, but for a while, we were happy together. My son was happy too, until you convinced his mother to murder him. The apartment door burst open. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them. Cole raised his hands and stepped back. I'm the one who called it in. This man is Noah Trent, also known as Michael Nash. He's a serial killer responsible for multiple house fires and the deaths of at least 7 people, including children. The lead officer looked between Cole and Noah, trying to assess the situation. Noah sat on the floor, blood still trickling from his head wound, looking defeated and empty. I want to confess, Noah said quietly. The words seemed to surprise everyone in the room, including Noah himself. But once he started talking, everything poured out like water through a broken dam. He confessed to the fire that killed Lena and Finn, to the 2 other Columbus fires that had claimed children's lives, to a pattern of manipulation and murder that stretched back 2 decades and covered 8 states. Cole listened to the confession with a mixture of satisfaction and sick horror. Each new detail was another nail in Noah's coffin, but also another reminder of how many families have been destroyed by this man's greed and manipulation. When the confession was finished, Noah was arrested and charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, and arson. The evidence Cole had gathered, combined with Noah's detailed confession, painted a picture of one of the most prolific serial killers in recent history. Cole gave his own statement to the police, carefully editing out any mention of vigilante justice or threats of violence. He presented himself as a grieving father who had stumbled onto evidence of his family's murder and followed it to its logical conclusion. The detectives seemed satisfied with his story. After all, he brought them a serial killer on a silver platter. They weren't inclined to question his methods too closely. 3 days later, Cole was back in Springfield, sitting in the cemetery where Lena and Finn were buried. He'd brought fresh flowers for Finn's grave, bright yellow daisies that matched the color of his son's favorite shirt. I got him, Cole said to the headstone. The man who hurt you. He's never going to hurt another kid. The words felt inadequate. Justice couldn't bring Finn back or erase the 7 years of grief and guilt Cole had carried. But it was something, a closing of the circle, a balance restored to a universe that had felt fundamentally unfair since that March night. Cole's phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Saw the news about the arrest. Are you okay? He typed back, I'm getting there. That afternoon, Cole drove to the Springfield Journal newspaper office and met with the crime reporter. He gave her copies of all the evidence he'd gathered, along with a detailed timeline of Noah's crimes. This is incredible, the reporter said, flipping through the documents. A 20-year killing spree disguised as accidental house fires. How'd he get away with it for so long? He was smart, patient. He targeted people who were already desperate, already considering leaving their families. He just gave them a way to do it that looked like tragedy instead of abandonment. And the children who died? Cole's jaw tightened. Collateral damage. Noah convinced their parents that they'd be better off dead than growing up in broken homes. The story broke 2 days later, sending shockwaves through the true crime community and law enforcement agencies across the country. Noah's confession led to the reopening of dozens of suspicious house fires, revealing a trail of death that spanned multiple states and jurisdictions. The media attention was intense, but short-lived. Cole gave a few interviews, always emphasizing that justice had been served and that families of other victims could finally have closure. He never mentioned his own plans for revenge or the satisfaction he felt watching Noah's world collapse. A week after the arrest, Cole received an unexpected phone call. Mr. Mercer? This is Detective Sarah Chun with the Columbus Police Department. I'm working on the Noah Trent case. What can I do for you? We've been investigating Mr. Trent's finances, and we found something interesting. He had several large life insurance policies on himself, with the beneficiaries listed as various fake identities he'd created over the years. Cole frowned. I don't understand. We think he was planning to fake his own death, stage another fire, collect the insurance money, and disappear with a new identity. The timeline suggests he was getting ready to do it within the next few months. The revelation hit Cole like a physical blow. If he hadn't found Noah when he did, the killer would have vanished forever, taking his secrets with him and leaving dozens of victims' families without answers. There's something else, Detective Chin continued. We found a notebook in his apartment with detailed plans for his final fire. It was supposed to be a family in Kansas City, a single mother with 2 young children. Cole closed his eyes. Somewhere in Kansas City, a mother and her kids were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that they'd been targeted for murder. Did you warn them? Already done. The family is in protective custody, and we're working with local authorities to make sure they stay safe. After hanging up, Cole sat in his motel room and tried to process what he'd learned. Noah's arrest hadn't just provided justice for past crimes. It had prevented future ones. Children who would have died were now safe. Families who would have been destroyed were still intact. For the first time since Finn's death, Cole felt something that might have been peace. That evening, he drove to Riley's house to say goodbye. She met him at the door with a smile that seemed genuinely relieved. I saw the news. That man who was watching the house, he's the one who killed your family. Him and his accomplice. Yes. How do you feel? Cole considered the question. How do you feel? The rage that had sustained him for 7 years was gone, replaced by something quieter but more lasting. Tired, he said finally, but also finished. Like I can finally move on. Riley nodded. What will you do now? I'm not sure. Maybe go back to being a paramedic. Maybe travel some more. I just know I don't have to keep running anymore. They talked for a while about the house, about the strange journey that had brought them together. Riley mentioned that the paranormal activity had stopped completely after Noah's arrest, as if the house itself could finally rest. Before leaving, Cole walked through the rooms one more time, trying to overlay his memories of the original house with this new structure. It was impossible. Too much had changed, too much had been lost and rebuilt. But in the backyard, he found the memorial garden Riley had mentioned. It was small but beautiful, with a stone bench and a plaque that read, "In memory of Lena and Finn Mercer, who found peace in this place." Cole sat on the bench and looked up at the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed through the night. The same sound he'd heard as a child growing up in this town. the same sound that had lulled Finn to sleep on countless nights. "I love you, buddy," he whispered to the darkness. "And I'm sorry it took me so long to get justice for you." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of spring flowers and new beginnings. For the first time in 7 years, Cole Mercer felt like he could breathe again. Months later, Cole received another call from Detective Chun. "I thought you should know. Noah Trent Carr was found this morning." Cole set down his coffee cup. He was in Denver now, working construction on a hospital expansion. The physical labor felt good, honest work that left him tired enough to sleep without dreams. "Where?" "Submerged in a river outside Columbus. Looks like he's been dead for weeks. Police are calling it a suicide." Cole stared out the window of his apartment at the Rocky Mountains in the distance. Noah Trent was dead. The man who had manipulated his wife and murdered his son was gone forever. He waited for some feeling of satisfaction or closure, but all he felt was emptiness. Noah's death wouldn't bring Finn back any more than his exposure had. It was just the final punctuation mark on a story that had ended the night his house burned down. "Thank you for letting me know," Cole said. "Mr. Mercer? For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, going after him the way you did. A lot of cops would have just let it stay closed. I didn't do it for the other families. I did it for my son. Maybe, but the result was the same. You saved lives." After hanging up, Cole went back to work. The hospital was taking shape floor by floor, built to save lives and heal the injured. It seemed fitting that he was helping create something that would serve the opposite purpose of what Noah Trent had spent his life doing. That night, Cole called his mother for the first time in 3 years. She was in her 70s now, still living in the same house where he'd grown up, still worried about her wandering son who never stayed anywhere long enough to put down roots. "Cole, is that really you?" "Hi, Mom." "Oh, honey, I've been so worried. I saw the news about that awful man and what he did to Lena and Finn." They talked for an hour, really talked about grief and healing and the long road back to something resembling normal life. His mother cried when he told her about finding the video footage, about finally learning the truth of what had happened that night. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for not giving up, for finding answers when everyone else had stopped looking. I don't know what comes next. You take it one day at a time. Same as always." That weekend, Cole drove to Springfield one last time. He visited Finn's grave, leaving fresh flowers and a small toy dinosaur, his son's favorite. Then he went to the newspaper office and read the follow-up story about Noah's death. The article was brief but thorough. Noah Trent, suspected serial killer responsible for multiple house fires and the deaths of at least 7 people, including children, had been found dead in his submerged vehicle. Police ruled it a suicide. Cole read the article twice, then folded the newspaper carefully. He drove to a quiet park outside town and sat at a picnic table as the sun set behind him. He lit a match and held it to the corner of the newspaper. The flames caught quickly, spreading across the newsprint and consuming Noah's name, his crimes, his final chapter. Cole watched until nothing remained but ash and smoke drifting up toward the darkening sky. Cole thought about justice and revenge, about the difference between the two. He'd set out for revenge, to make Noah pay for what he'd taken. But somehow, in the process, he'd stumbled into something larger. Justice for all the families Noah had destroyed, closure for parents who had spent years wondering what they could have done differently. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was what Finn would have wanted. Not just vengeance for his own death, but protection for other children who might have followed him into Noah's trap. Cole drove out of Springfield for the last time as the sun set behind him. In his rearview mirror, the city grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely, swallowed by distance and darkness. He had no destination in mind, no plan beyond putting miles between himself and the past. But for the first time since that terrible March night, he wasn't running from something. He was moving toward whatever came next. The road stretched ahead of him, empty and full of possibilities. Cole Mercer drove into the night, carrying his son's memory with him like a light that would never go out. Behind him, smoke from a distant factory caught the last rays of sunlight, drifting up toward the stars like prayers or promises, like the final breath of fires that had finally burned themselves out.